in Flutter your app. You are able to deploy your solution as a mobile app. And when we say mobile app, I mean iOS and Android at the same time. Also, you can be able to deploy it as a web application, desktop, and also an embedded system. So Flutter is a framework where you can be able to write code once and deploy to any device, be it iPhones, iOS app for iPhones, desktop applications for Windows, for Linux, for Mac. So it is a one language that you can be able to deploy to any device and even any mobile app. So that's something notable about Flutter. Another thing about Flutter is, as you can see from my screen, that you can be able to do a mobile app, a desktop app, an embedded system here, and so many others. So the good thing about Flutter is that it is fast and it compiles to the native device that you're going to run to. If kama ni iOS, itakuwa native iOS. It will convert all that code for you into the iOS language called Swift. Fast, unlike to have frameworks like Framework 7, Ionic Framework, Angular, all those days they were able to do cross-platform where you write once and then deploy in all platforms. But they had issues in terms of fastness and even productivity, and also how flexible it is, because it was rendering a lot. It had to do a lot of rendering before you now even load something. So it could take years or even time to show to the interface. So Flutter came in and breached that gap massively. So that's something about Flutter, basically. So for installation, also for Flutter, I'm going to leave you guys to look for tutorials and see how to set it up. So for this case, I'm just going to dive in straight into the demo. We're going to do a same application that we've done, but we're going to see how Flutter now work. So with that, let me just minimize this page. And then within the same Android Studio that we have, so I'll just say new Flutter project. And then with that, it will ask for my SDK path, which is in this path where I am. And then I will just say next. And then here, I'm going just to provide the project name for our app. So for this case, as we did for the other one, we just say Kweli app, and then it's going to be stored and Flutter folder for my case. And then it's going to be a new Flutter demo project. And then the project type is an application. So it's not a plugin, it's not a package, neither module or skeleton. So we are dealing with an app. And then under the organization, just like on Android for Java, where we provide the package name, here we provide also the organization as with the syntax of a website. So we're going to say something dot com. So we can say something like demo dot Ukweli app. So the Android language you are going to decide, for my case, is Java. You can choose Kotlin if you're familiar. The iOS language to be used, we'll leave it by Swift, which is the latest way of developing Swift language, Swift iOS app for iPhones. And then here we can see now which platforms we want to target with our app. And this is where Flutter wins big time, because it has managed to be able to consolidate its rendering engine to be able to compile to Android, iOS, Linux, macOS, web, and even Windows. So since we are dealing with mobile app ecosystem at this point, we're just going to stick with the two, Android and iOS. So for this case, since I have an Android phone, I don't have an iOS. I could have shown you guys how it looks on an iOS. Unfortunately, not today. So for that, we'll just say finish. There's nothing else to set. So all things looks good. And then the directory does not exist, so I would like it to create. Oh yeah, it must be a valid package name. So in Flutter, it is recommended to use underscore for naming your app with smaller case. So with that, we just follow that rule and then we say finish. So by default, even before doing anything with a Flutter project, so already we have been built a sample app, normally called a counter app. And before I explain the folder structure, I'm going to just run this code so that you see how the default app look like, and then I will jump into explanation of how Flutter looks like in terms of the structure and even in terms of the code. So Flutter normally utilizes a language called Dart. So Flutter is just a framework, name of a framework, but the actual programming language is called Dart. So with that, we'll let it to build, and so that you can. So something else also to note in the class for Flutter is that everything is treated as a widget. And here, when we mean widget, in your mind, just think of but that may be confusing or misleading. So probably we will just say that think that everything in Flutter as a widget, and then you can be able to expand more on that. So as it builds, let me take a water break, and then we proceed. I'm seeing it's taking a while to build. Let me give it a few more minutes. So as it is building, let me just explain the folder structure so that we don't waste some more time. So after creating a new Flutter project, you can be able to see now the folder structure of how it looks. So within our Android Studio project structure, we see that we have a .tool, .idea, Android folder, build folder, iOS folder, a lib folder, and a test folder. So for the first two folders, the .dat tool and the .idea tool, they're normally used by the IDE. We don't tamper so anyhow with these two folders. And also we also have the Android folder, which is going to render during the building. It is going to use this folder to build the Android app, and also is going to use this folder to build the iOS app. So inside the build folder is where it stores build information, and most notably is now the APK. When being generated, is normally stored under the build folder. And then now under the lib folder is where now we do our code, or where we write our code using that. So remember I said in Flutter we write once using one language, and then it can be deployed to so many devices or different platforms by just building based from this one language called that. So our main concentration area is the lib folder. And here we are not going to see the different structures like we've seen in Android. Purely, this is going to be purely written in. Each and every file will be written as a .file, and you can treat each and every file as a activity, because everything in Flutter is a widget. So what I'm saying now, it may not make pretty much sense, but for those who are going to be interested to just look at online resources, most notably YouTube and Stack Overflow, if you get stuck. Yeah. So now our project has run, so we can be able to see that we see this demo page. As you can be able to see, we have the app bar with Flutter demo homepage, and then you've pushed this. You have pushed the button this many times, and then the counter is by default set to 0. So by the time I click on this button here, the bottom plus, it increases our counter so many times. So in each and every new Flutter project, it comes with this application just for you to see how Flutter works. So within the lib folder, we will always have a main entry file known as main.dat file. So inside main.dat file, here we are going to have very, very various sections accordingly. But one of the main function inside the main file, inside the main.dat file, is the main method, which initiates or run our application using the run app command. Now, I can reference this run app as the onCreate method on Android, where we start a certain activity by setting the layout. So this is just like basically mean like in each and every app launch, execute this main method, and then from this main method as our entry point, you now should be able to create a navigation system where you can be able to navigate with the other sub activities in your project. So from this sample activity, I'm going to show you now based on an already project that I have done for the demo, which is known samples app, so that you can be able to see each and every section how it looks like. So inside our sample app, it has 3 main files. As you can see, it has a login, it has the entry point, which is the main file, it has a login.dat file, and a dashboard.dat file. So each this file, just treat them as the user interface. At the same time, you can be able to treat them as also where you can do backend logics within the same files. So one thing about Flutter framework, it has not given you a certain structure like we have seen in Android. So in Flutter is where you're given the liberty to structure your code. So if you want to put everything inside one file, so well with you. If you want to create different sections for your project, you want to architecture your project with, say you want to put your backend logics in a different folder, your UI in a different folder, you have the liberty to do so. So in Flutter, it does not constrain you to the way Android we have just previously seen. So here you have the liberty to choose your whichever programming pattern you like to use. Okay. Now, when I say programming pattern, I mean the patterns called like MVC, MVVM. Now, to just explain shortly, MVC is model view controller pattern. I'll leave it that for you guys to learn. But in essential, programming patterns help you to write efficient projects and efficient code. So it helps you to organize your things for future scaling of your project. It helps you to manage scalability and so many other things when it comes to project. Other than lumping everything in one area, it is always good to follow a certain programming pattern so that you can be able to caution yourself in future if there is future features that needs to be developed. You can be able to easily work it while having followed a certain programming pattern. So programming pattern, I'll leave you guys to go and read more about it. But in this coding journey, it is good for you guys to understand to go to code using a certain programming pattern, be it MVC, be it MVVM. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to take you through quickly what we have here. So I'm going to start with our main entry point file called the main.dat file. So our main.dat file in this case, it is a very simple file with very few lines of code, 27 marks. Now in this file, as I've taught you previously, we have the main method, which is the entry point of our application, which runs an app. And this app, we pass a constant of my app. Now this my app is this class defined here at the bottom, this, which is a class which extends a widget called stateless widget. Now in Flutter, there are two widgets which you can extend. One is the stateless widget, and the other one is normally called a stateful widget. So for just explanation, a stateless widget is one which does not require mutable state. Now, kurahisisha hiyo Kiingereza ngumu, a mutable state is when, for example, you have a data which needs to be changed programmatically during an application while it is running. So let's say you had two fields that takes a sum. Let's say field A takes 1, field 2 takes some an int or a value like 3, called sum, which adds the field 1 and the field 2, the values from that field to give you the calculation for those values. So for a stateless widget, when you do that, when you click on 3, you may not be able to see the end results or the value 3 because that widget, a stateless widget in short, it is best for showing UIs or activities which doesn't require manipulations. So for this case, for now we're extending a stateless widget. So while a stateful widget, on the other hand, is the one which now accepts data to be changed within that activity. And when I mean activity in Flutter, I mean a widget. So now inside this class, my app, we have a constructor, which is returned as my app, which just gets a key, which by default comes with Flutter. And then here we override a method now called build. Now inside build is where now we can say it is something like on create in Java, as you have seen previously. The method called on create on Java. So inside here on the build, it will return a material app. Material app here, it is a theme called, it is a material component theme, which is also shipped by default with Flutter. So inside our material app, you can define the title for our app called samples app, which will also act as our app name. And then we also have the liberty to change the theme of our app directly within the build method inside our app. So here we see we have a primary swatch with the color .blue. So you can even change that color immediately to something else like green. And then it will be able to change the entire theme of the app to, based on the color green color. And then we have a parameter here called home. This home will now be like our launcher activity. Like we've seen previously, it was the login activity. So in this case, you're going to have the login page being executed as the home page. Now, within also the material app, we also have the routing section. So the previously we learned routing with Java using intent, programmatically using intent. So for Flutter, it is a little bit different. We defined it inside the route section here. So we say /login where we pass the contacts and then we associate with the login page, which is basically a class stored on this other file called login.dat, which we'll get there shortly. And then also we have defined another route for our dashboard. And then we have associated with the dashboard page. this, which is this file at this place. So with that, this is a basic skeleton of our entry point of our app. And always, it will always have to return a material app as the root, as the app for each and every project, where you can define the title, the theme, the home. And this section has so many parameters. So if you do a control spacebar, you can see so many things that you can be able to tweak as options in the widgets. So another beautiful thing about Flutter is that if you want to tweak something, you don't need to overthink. You just choose the option from the list of options available, and then you just tweak as it is. So this is our entry point file, where we do theme, the default page to open, and then the routing, which is going to be used to navigate between pages. So with that, I'm going to go to our first login.dat page, where for me to explain this, I'm going to need to run this application so that we can be able to learn as we progress. So just click on run. So the app is going to build. So as it is building, let me explain the coding structure here by minimizing so that it can be quite elaborate as we proceed. So inside the login.dat, we have created a class called login page. So take this as a login activity with Java we have seen previously, which extends a stateless widget, which I've explained that we don't need to perform any UI manipulation. So we just say it's going to be a static widget, in short. And then by default, it comes with a constructor called login page. And for that case, we're going to override the build function, as we've just seen within the main entry point. And then as we override the build function, we'll see that now it is returning a widget called scaffold. Now, scaffold is where Flutter make your life easy, that you can be able to define things like the application, app bar, and even the body, and so many other parameters, as you can see within the body. Like even changing the background color of this specific login page, you can do it from here. You can even implement something called a bottom navigation bar as a widget, a floating action button, a drawer. So many of these things, you just call them and then you code. Umechoka? Ni nani amepumua kupumua kweli kweli. So for Flutter, I'm going to just skim above slightly. So as it is building, you can see that for you to define, you just say app bar as a parameter, and then you just say app bar, just like that, and then you press enter. You can be able to pass parameters like title inside the app bar by passing a text widget to show that you're passing a text widget inside this app bar. And then for this, you can be able now to even manipulate the app bar on its own specifically by seeing here it's called a login page. You can even change it to something else. Now within this widget, you can be able to even change even the background color for that specific widget, add things like shapes, actions, and so many other parameters which you can explore on your own. So for now, for this case, you can see you can be able to do a login page. And then inside the body now, which is the white full area, as you can see, we have a text called login at the top, which is this. Just after the abba, we have manipulated the abba here like this. And then we have a text called login at the bottom, and then you have the fields called email, which it is just a text field widget. And within this widget, we added some decorations as an option. And then inside this input decoration, we placed a text called email. So you can be able to see that this field is for email. And then same case for the password field. When you come, you see it is a text password for this field. You can see now this is a password field. And then finally for our elevated button, which is sign in. So in Flutter, it is called elevated button as a widget, of which it takes an onPressed a function and also a child parameter, which accepts you to pass any widget. So you can even pass a text widget by the name sign in. So that you can be able even to see that button is called sign in. So basically, this is how you build a UI in Flutter. So it is not something sweet like drag and drop we have seen in Android Studio. So here you have to do a lot of efforts in doing the UI. And I think that's some of the limitations coming to Flutter, where you just have to write and build everything on the code. But the good thing, it will just decompile and compile everything to the platform of your choice. So with this, you can be able now to put, so when somebody clicks on this sign in, we have now the code for navigating from one page to another. Now in Flutter, we use something called Navigator. So Navigator is also a widget, which even for me, while learning for the first time, yeah, it really didn't make sense that everything is a widget. But with experience and building so many projects with Flutter, you just come and get used to it and utilizing so many resources that is available. So by saying navigator, dot of context here means where you are, which is the login page. You say you want to be pushed to the named route, which called /dashboard. So push name will come to /dashboard by coming checking the main entry point file under the routes and then pointing it to the dashboard, and then which will just open now the dashboard page, this one. So if you do it practically, when you click on sign in, you will see that we have been pushed using this code into that dashboard. And when we see we placed on the dashboard, we placed just a text called dashboard and then a button called logout. So opening the dashboard page, well, it's a very basic page. Also, it's a class which extends a stateless widget. And then we override the build function where we return a scaffold. And then a scaffold where it provides us with the parameter of defining the application ABBA, the body content, and so much. So here we can see, we can be able to see the text of the dashboard. You can even change it to home. And then you click on save, it just changes automatically to home within the UI. So another beautiful feature with Flutter framework is that everything you change, it reflects on the device real time. The moment you change something and you click save, it will just push that section and then it will just change on the UI. As opposed in Android where you will have to click on build several times. So with that, inside our body, we can see that we have a column which takes the entire white area here, where we have just a small text called a dashboard. And then we created an elevated button up to this point, where we also did the same code for the navigation, but now back to the logout, back to the login page. So with that is just a very, very simple structure of how to do Flutter. So normally to teach Flutter is very, very difficult because Flutter is such a dynamic language. It is not tied to a specific architecture where you can be able to teach somebody that your UI goes here, your backend goes here. If you want to change colors, you change here. So it's kind of a very dynamic language, and that if you learn on your way, everybody has its own way of doing things, because this fracture, the framework itself has given you the liberty to choose the kind of the pattern that you want to use. And for that slight few minutes, I think I believe I am done with Flutter. Yeah, so any questions from you members? I'd like to close it from there. Thank you, Dr. I open the.
Thank you, Vincent, for that very elaborate demonstration on a Flutter framework. I hope you members have gained a lot from this. You have seen an experience of a Flutter framework for those ones who are getting an experience for the first time, but those ones who are in mobile app programming too, this becomes quite very relevant for your case. But again, as I have said, for purposes of mobile app development in the industry, this is what actually happens today. In the commercial development environment, people tend to use frameworks more than develop natively using Android Studio in that regard. So it's good to know how to code using frameworks. Unless there is a question, unless there is any question, I want to take a few questions before we wind up. I know we've taken quite some time, but maybe even if there's any question, and if there's no question, then I may need just to wind up. Any question, members? If you have any question, you can just post on the chat so that we can be able to look at it. Otherwise, it seems there's no question. If there's no question, I would give it back to Vincent. You have any comments?
Yeah, I have. Huh?
Yes, you can make one comment as I close.
Yeah, so yeah, it is very true, Dr. that nowadays what we're doing, actually, what we're doing here in the corporate world, in the industries, you will find clients wanting you to develop a solution where it's going to meet multiple devices. So here's where frameworks comes in. As opposed to developing only for Android using the Java or Kotlin way, frameworks become very handy because you can be able to meet the business needs in terms of running a platform where you as a developer, you also even easen your life by writing using one language, one code base, and then having the ability for that framework to deploy or even to be built based on the different devices that is being needed by the business. So you never know the growing demands of a business. So that's one of the things of the frameworks where we really outside here we use. And then also in terms of the company, it even becomes easier for the company to manage multiple services since it is being written in one code base. And then another thing about framework is that once you understand it, it gives you an increase in terms of job opportunities, I would say, because when an employer sees that you can be able to develop an application and even assure him that you can be able to deploy on multiple devices, I mean, that will give you a very increasing chances of you getting a job or even a project by a client. So it is very key for those who would like to venture in terms of the corporate world outside here. Yeah. Another thing maybe to add on is all these things, it is through determination and discipline. So like me, as I started, a short story is I used to open a video in YouTube. I will pause it, write that code vile muhindi anasema hapo na ile accent yao yenye karibu hata inakupita, and then play again, write that code, see how it execute, pause it, play again, rewind. So that's how the journey has been for me up to this point. It is constant learning and always having that urge to learn new things and even to push forward. Yeah. So I think that is all from me, Dr.
Yeah. That's great. I think members you have had a first-hand experience of what's happening outside in the industry. You have seen an elaborate demonstration on both using Android Studio working on Java or Kotlin in that regard. And on this second section that we have worked on a Flutter framework. So in case of any questions or anything, feel free to ask the questions, and we'll be glad to answer. Otherwise, the learning journey is like that. You need to put in a lot of discipline, a lot of sacrifice, and hard work, so that you are able to be where Vincent is as we speak at the moment. So it's all about hard work. So otherwise, at this point in time, I would want to specifically convey special thanks to Vincent for this particular exposition on mobile application development. So thank you so much for you accepting to take us through this particular session, sharing with us. I know you have a very busy schedule, but you have gone out of your way to also share with us. So I would want to say thank you so much. Of course, I know we are engaging on 1, 2, 3 issues here and there. So we'll keep in contact. We'll keep in communicating. Every other semester, we've been having Vincent at least once every semester to give us an exposition on mobile app development and how the landscape is happening outside there. So with that, I would want to say thank you so much and wind up the session at that. So we can catch up in the next time. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. You can
Thank
even
you.
share my number to the members for those who would like to reach me for any queries. Yeah, I'm open.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can share on the chat. Maybe you can
Okay.
share on the chat. Yes, yes. I think that's very, very important. So that if you have any question, kindly don't hesitate to contact or reach Vincent.
I've posted on the group.
Yes, 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 yes. I've seen. So anyone wants
Yeah.
to reach Vincent, just in case you're not able to get the number, you can let me know. Yes. Maybe Vincent, you can say something as we close.
Um. Thank you so much, Dr. I am blessed to have this opportunity to just share my experience to the rest of the members. And I hope all of you have a very great evening. And I hope to catch up with some of your questions later on. And I'll be gladly ready to help all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.